Today our discussion about constraints concept. So first of all, what are constraints and why we need to apply constraints to the table whenever we are creating the table. First one, a simple example. Constraints are used to apply, nothing but are used to set restrictions on table data. See, for example, in all the previous examples, whenever you are creating the table, suppose if I give an employee ID, no restrictions, like you can enter employee ID, you can leave it as a blank, you can enter duplicate also, like this. We didn't set any restrictions while inserting the records. But so to enter the data, we need to follow some rules. Nothing but simply data restrictions. Those data restrictions are called constraints. So how many constraints are there? Here, constraints are not null constraint, unique constraint, check constraint, default constraint, primary key, foreign key constraint. Primary key, foreign key constraint. These are the constraints available. See, among these, first these four we are discussing, and these two followed by. First one, the simple way of understanding those constraints. Here it is, I'm taking one table creation called voters table I'm creating. The easy way to understand is a voters list table I'm creating. For this, I'm using voter ID is a name, for example, age and state. And this is consider voters list of suppose Telangana state. Voters list of Telangana state is a voter ID, is a name. Next one, age, and belongs to which state. Suppose only four we are taking. Only four. So here among this, first one is voter ID. So every voter should have ID. Every person should have ID. So not only that, that is unique ID only. That is unique. So here, whenever we are giving the constraints, two constraints we have to give. One is a unique. Second one is a not null. Is a not null constraint. So whenever they start entering unique ID, that is, for example, if they try to enter null value or duplicate ID, it will show errors directly. Only unique ID is allowed and null not allowed. Is a common rule. So that is a constraint we need to set. Whenever we are creating the column is an ID column. ID. Next one is a name. Here, when you are creating that name column, names duplicates can be allowed. For example, here person name is Amar, Annie. For example, again with the name Amar, you can create, but null is not allowed. Null is not allowed. It's not null. It's not null. Only one we are creating. Only one. So general thinking. So whenever we are creating that name, whenever We are creating that name. Null keys not allowed. Remaining duplicates allowed. That is. So next one, suppose if you go with the age. So whenever they are entering that age, it's a voters list. So everyone should be 18 plus. 18 plus. So if they enter the values above 18, like a 23, is a 34, is a 21, is okay. Is okay. But suppose here if they enter 17, directly it should give error. That is, of course, not null should be there. Not null should be there. Not only that. And next one is a check. It's a check constraint. Check that age is greater than or equals to 18. Check constraint age. So whenever we are entering, there itself it is checking the condition. Itself, it is checking the condition with the help of check constraint. The next one is, last one is a state constraint. So what is that state constraint? It's a state. State means by default already it is giving that it's a Telangana state related. So every time no need to insert that state. Whenever we are inserting the data, it should be inserted automatically. It should be inserted automatically. So if you enter that state is a TZ is okay. Manually you entering that state is okay. But even though you are not entering, automatically it has to enter that state. It's a not null and it is a default. Is a default constraint with the value is a TZ. So constraints are used to set restrictions. Set restrictions while inserting the records into that table. On column for columns, we are setting that one. That is okay. How can we create the table? How can we create the table? Please go through this once. Right. Here it is. Now I'm creating the table. After that, I'll show you that whenever you are violating, whenever we are violating that, how it will show that errors also. The first one is what? Creating the table. Create. So any table we are taking. First, let me check. It's not there. Okay. Now create table voters. So one by one, I'm writing like this. First one is a voter ID. Simply integer type first. Next one is a unique. Capital letters not required, but I just mentioned because it's a constraint and not null. You need to write like this, just with the spaces. Next one is a name. Name is a type you need to specify anyway. And the constraint you need to write. Constraint. Next one is a age. It's an integer. Not null, of course, but directly I'm using the check constraint. Check age is greater than or equals to 18. is greater. Oh my God, it will be gone. Equals to 18. Next, state, state. It's the same, is a varchar of 20, varchar of 20, and it's a default. Default, we are giving like this, is a case. Creating like this. Now, if you see that description orders, look at this. Now, if you observe, sir, here it is, what is this primary? Unique and not null. Unique and not null is indirectly saying that it's a primary key. No need to write unique and not null. If you want to write both combinedly, directly you can use the word primary key also. But here we are not using. Directly you can use the word primary key. Okay. Now, here it is, see, age integer can be null, because here you didn't mention this not null and not null. So it is showing that can be null, but these should be not null, not null. And the default values for these three not there. And for this default value is there. For this default value is there. This is how just creating. Check age. I just added. These two you need to write here only. By mistake, I pressed enter. It is showing like this. And now, so whenever we are inserting the data, how we are getting that errors? Now I'm inserting. Insert into orders, values. First ID. Next one is a name. Next one is a age. Next one is a state. Everything I'm entering. Next also in the same way. Is a 102. Is a name. And some age. We enter. We enter. As of now is okay. Now we are trying to violate the things. First of all, I don't want to enter the state. We already discussed that. If you want to enter the data into a particular columns, first of all, you have to specify those column names. All the column names you have to specify, right? So here we are taking like this. Simply insert into orders. Only ID is a name and age. Values is a 103 is a name and is a age. I mentioned. See, it is not giving any error because inserting the value into TC is optional, but still value will come automatically. See. So normally if you don't enter, it contains null, but it is not giving null now. Okay. So now I'm violating the rule. I'm violating. It's the same. Here it is. Whenever you are inserting, is a 104, but age, I'm just entering 17. I'm just entering that age is a 17. When you enter, it will show that check constraint. Check constraint is violated. Okay. Check constraint is violated. Now, for example, I'm giving this is correctly. But here, I just want to enter is a null value. Column name cannot be null. Column name cannot be null. That is also the constraint. Or we are giving as usual, but here it is we are trying to enter with the same data which is already present. Duplicate entry 103 for the key is a 1. So by mistake, every time whenever we are inserting the data by violating the constraints, so automatically you will get errors. You will get errors automatically. So that is the one. Okay. So these are the 4 constraints: unique constraint, not null constraint, check constraint, and default constraint.